the way. We haven't seen any tear gas. And speaking earlier with our security expert, Jeff Harp, it is a fine line that these officers are having to toe to make sure that things don't get more out of control. They don't know what other tricks some of these protesters might have up their sleeve. Again, you're looking at 880 right now, 2 remaining protesters, and then you can see one of their barrels there in the middle, because at about 6:30 this morning, they chained themselves to these barrels and then put some sort of substance. We're thinking preliminarily it was some sort of quick dry concrete. Not an expert at that, but it was something that made these barrels very heavy so that they were able to not only have their bodies in the middle of those lanes, but very heavy equipment that would take a while to move. And we spoke with Caltrans within the past hour, Pedro Quintana, and he talked about the need to make sure that the roadway, once you get the people out, is safe for motorists to be able to come through the area. I am hearing now from my producer that we have 2 lanes of traffic. Is this correct? 2 lanes of traffic. Yes, correct, in the northbound lanes that are open. So we're seeing a little bit more progress slowly. We saw one of those left lanes open about an hour ago, an hour and a half ago, and now we're seeing another lane of traffic open. So things continue to evolve on 880. And again, as Gianna's been watching the traffic back up, don't want to call it miraculous, but it certainly has been good news that people have been able to make their way out of that situation, either by slowly moving through these open lanes or finding some of the exits and just being able to get themselves out of this mess and choosing a parallel route. Gianna, what are you looking at right now? I know you have the live real-time information on that traffic backup. What are we seeing?
Yeah, and I mean, having that second lane open is going to make another big step towards getting things a little bit better on 880 right now. And just looking at that live traffic cam we have as you head northbound 880 just north of the Coliseum, it's definitely starting to improve, at least having that 1 lane open. So that means those 2 right lanes, though, are still completely shut down. And it's obviously taking a long time to clear everyone off the roadway there. There's still 2 protesters sitting there with those attached to those barrels. But look at this perspective, Ann. It's now we're seeing another step, another bit of an improvement for traffic heading northbound. Again, this is still several, exits beyond this point. I mean, the activity is just way north of here. It's past this area. It's as you head just south of 980, and that's a pretty good amount of distance there. But, what's also interesting is when you travel along 880, and many of us have, and many people do for the commute, but so many big rigs that head to the Port of Oakland or big rigs heading, it's a really, common thing to see these large trucks carrying goods and supplies and things like that. So this is to be very disruptive, for so many, businesses and companies and commuters and people, because of that closure. And we're seeing traffic just backing up here, trying to get off the freeway at that first exit. But having another lane open is just one step in the right direction. And it's definitely improving as you travel through there, still with delays southbound, though, for anyone sort of kind of wondering what's happening. Then you've got the ripple effect of traffic coming to westbound 80 and heading towards the Bay Bridge for people trying to find alternates to work their way back into the city. And you've got the other closure at southbound 880 at 7th Street for trying to access the freeway there also. So that's adding to a busy ride into the maze. And of course, the closure over towards the Golden Gate Bridge, which is an issue also. So, little by little, Ann, we're seeing an improvement, but certainly it'll make the biggest difference if they can open a lane or 2, at least as progress is being made.
Yeah, and here we are in the Bay Area where there's only certain routes in and out of certain areas to get across the Bay, to get into the city. Again, this is part of protests that we're seeing nationwide right now. We're seeing Lower Manhattan, they have roadways shut down. Chicago, they've shut them down near O'Hare. We're seeing protests in Philadelphia. But the Bay Area is unique in that you just only have a certain amount of options to get around.
And what's concerning, Ann, if we're seeing this happening in other cities and areas, is what's planned for later on today. If this is something they are going to try to do again in the evening or afternoon commute, or maybe in surface streets and areas that might be more traveled, like the city, like in San Francisco. So I think a lot of us are sort of on standby, just waiting to see if there is more planned throughout the day. This might be just the start. And of course, we've been keeping a close eye on a lot of our other Bay Area bridges, like the Bay Bridge and the San Mateo Bridge and the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge to make sure nothing's happening there as well. And we're still looking live. We've been covering this since 6:30 this morning. That's when we first got a report of, it was possibly an accident as it was first reported, then turned into a major, demonstration disruption for transportation today with those protesters there. And several of them were stuck there and chained and in those barrels using their arms, sort of connecting each other through there. And it had to take a lot of planning for them to sort of, begin something like this. At 6:30 in the morning on 880, which is what we're looking at live here in Oakland, you have all this traffic and, a pretty busy part of the morning commute for people heading to the Bay Bridge, likely through this area, or maybe to the Oakland airport. It's just certainly a busy area and very difficult to just halt and stop traffic, which is what we saw happen early this morning. Now, that's just one of the protests that are currently happening right now. We're now looking live over at the Golden Gate Bridge where the second protest happened here as well. And they're occupying the southbound lanes of the Golden Gate Bridge, but northbound lanes are also completely shut down. We saw Wilson Walker there briefly. Our reporter will bring us a live report here shortly. And you've got a live look here at the toll plaza. And, it's 11:56, and you would typically see cars travel through here at this time. And for people getting in and out of the city through Marin, through the Golden Gate, but today not happening with that closure. And this has been out there since about 8 this morning and certainly causing a huge issue for any commuters coming out of Marin or anyone traveling out of San Francisco trying to get across the Golden Gate Bridge. And with these two major closures on two separate areas, it's affecting a lot of our communities. If you're headed out of the East Bay or if you're headed out of San Francisco trying to get over into Marin, it's certainly a big problem for a lot of people. And we really are thinking about the people who've been stuck on the Golden Gate, especially for several hours now, and it's just been a big mess for a lot of people. And we've been covering this since 6:30 this morning. These two separate protesters will continue to do so. We'll be live over on KPIX coming up in just a few minutes with the latest information. Of course, we'll have the latest info on when all these lanes will open up at the Golden Gate as well as the 880. So join us there in just a few minutes.